Marvel is once again trying to push a Fantastic Four movie onto audiences, but history has shown that this team has never truly fit into the modern superhero landscape. No matter how many times Hollywood has tried, the Fantastic Four have failed to connect with audiences in a meaningful way. The question is, why do these movies keep flopping? Let's break down. The Fantastic Four never got a great movie because the studios never truly wanted to make one. Fox only cared about keeping the rights to the characters, not about telling a compelling story. The Fantastic Four film rights were initially with Roger Corman in 1994, and that movie was literally made just to prevent the rights from expiring. It was never even meant to be released. That set the tone for what would follow, a series of half-hearted adaptations made out of obligation, not passion. When Marvel was building the MCU, Fox knew they had to do something with the Fantastic Four, but instead of taking the time to get it right, they rushed out films that followed generic superhero formulas. The 2005 and 2007 movies were made to compete with Spider-Man and X-Men, but they lacked the same level of respect for the characters. Then, when Marvel Studios' success became undeniable, Fox panicked and rebooted the franchise in 2015. They didn't care about making a great Fantastic Four movie, they just didn't want Marvel to get the rights back. That's why Fantastic Four was rushed into production with no clear vision, leading to one of the biggest superhero disasters ever. Dr. Doom is one of the most iconic villains in all of comics. He's a genius, a sorcerer, and the ruler of an entire nation. He's basically Marvel's Darth Vader, but somehow, every Fantastic Four movie found a way to ruin him. In the 2005 version, they turned him into a greedy businessman instead of a feared dictator. Instead of being a genius who mastered both science and magic, he was just a jealous ex-friend of Reed Richards who got electricity powers. That version of Doom was so weak that instead of ruling Latveria with an iron fist, he spent most of his time sulking and whining. Then came the 2015 reboot, which somehow made Doom even worse. Instead of being an arrogant but brilliant leader, he was turned into a socially awkward loner. His big villain moment, walking around in a hospital hallway making people's heads explode. He barely had any screen time, and his final battle with the Fantastic Four was so short and forgettable that most people probably don't even remember how it ended. Every attempt to bring Doom to the screen has missed the core of what makes him such an incredible villain. The Fantastic Four are supposed to be a family. That's not just a tagline, it's the most important part of their dynamic. When Fox decided to race swap Johnny Storm in the 2015 film, it could have worked if they had fully committed to the change. Instead, they made Sue Storm adopted, which completely changed the family dynamic in a way that felt unnecessary and forced. If the goal was diversity, why not make both Storm siblings black, or change Reed Richards' race instead of feeling like a natural update? It felt like Fox was trying to score diversity points without actually thinking about what made the Fantastic Four work, and that was just one example of how the 2015 film failed to respect the source material. Reed Richards, who is supposed to be one of the smartest men in the world, was portrayed as a nervous, uncharismatic scientist who barely took charge. Sue Storm, one of Marvel's strongest female characters, was reduced to a side character with barely anything to do. The Thing didn't even get his signature catchphrase, "It's clobberin' time," until a cringeworthy moment that had no emotional weight. Changing aspects of a character isn't inherently bad, but doing it without any thought or purpose only makes the movie feel less authentic. The Fantastic Four films have always struggled with casting, either playing it too safe or making choices that just didn't fit. The one major success was Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. He nailed the cocky, hot-headed personality of the Human Torch, to the point that Marvel later gave him an even better role as Captain America. But outside of that, every film struggled to get the right actors for the job. The 2005 films had Ioan Gruffudd as Reed Richards, who looked the part but played him way too stiff and awkward. Jessica Alba was cast as Sue Storm mainly for star power, but she had no chemistry with the rest of the team. Michael Chiklis was a decent Ben Grimm, but the bulky practical suit made it hard for him to fully express the depth of the Thing's character. Then came the 2015 version, which somehow made things worse. Miles Teller as Reed Richards was a complete miscast. He didn't have the charm, the leadership, or the presence to carry the role. Kate Mara's Sue Storm felt disconnected from the rest of the team, and Jamie Bella's The Thing just didn't work at all. Even Michael B. Jordan, who's a great actor, felt wasted because his character wasn't given enough to do. In a team that's supposed to feel like family, the actors never felt like they cared about each other, and that completely killed the chemistry that made the comic so great. For a superhero team that has some of the coolest powers in Marvel, every Fantastic Four movie has somehow managed to make their action feel lifeless. The 2005 films had generic fights that felt like they were straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon. Instead of seeing Reed Richards using his intellect in creative ways, he just stretched his arms a little. The Thing mostly just punched stuff. Sue Storm turned invisible and created generic force fields. And Johnny Storm? Well, at least his flames looked decent, but his fights were never exciting. And then there was Rise of the Silver Surfer, which had the ultimate sin. It turned Galactus, one of Marvel's most terrifying villains, into a boring cloud. Galactus is supposed to be a massive cosmic entity that devours planets, but in the movie, he was literally just a swirling dust storm. The 2015 reboot somehow made things even worse. The final battle against Dr. Doom took place in a dull, empty CGI wasteland, with the team awkwardly floating around as they fought. There was no tension, no creativity, and no real stakes. The film's visual effects looked cheap, the action was completely forgettable, and worst of all, it just wasn't fun. A Fantastic Four movie should feel grand and adventurous, but instead, every single one has felt small, uninspired, and visually outdated. If the 2005 Fantastic Four films were disappointing, Fox rushed it into production without a clear vision, and the results were so bad that even the director, Josh Trank, disowned the movie before it was even released. The film tried to take a dark and gritty approach, stripping away the fun and adventure that defined the Fantastic Four. Instead of a story about a family of explorers, it became a dull, lifeless sci-fi horror movie that barely felt like a superhero film at all. The behind-the-scenes drama was just as messy as the film itself. Trank reportedly clashed with the studio, leading to massive reshoots that changed entire chunks of the movie. Fox lost faith in Trank's vision and hacked the film apart in the editing room. Characters disappeared for long stretches, the tone shifted awkwardly between serious and unintentionally hilarious, and by the time the movie finally got to the climax, audiences had already checked out. The worst part, the film completely failed to deliver a compelling version of the Fantastic Four. Reed Richards, the supposed genius leader, spent most of the movie running away. Sue Storm, one of the strongest characters in Marvel, had almost nothing to do. Ben Grimm's transformation into the Thing was barely explored, and Johnny Storm was just there to fill space. And then there was Dr. Doom, who looked like a melted mannequin and had no real motivation beyond "I hate humanity." One of the biggest reasons Fantastic Four movies keep failing is that Marvel itself hasn't given the team the respect they deserve. In the comics, Marvel sidelined the Fantastic Four for years because of their feud with Fox over film rights. They canceled the Fantastic Four comic series in 2015 and downplayed their importance in the Marvel Universe, pushing the X-Men and Avengers instead. By the time Marvel Studios got the rights back, the Fantastic Four felt like an afterthought. Younger fans grew up with Iron Man, Captain America, and Spider-Man as the faces of Marvel, while the Fantastic Four faded into obscurity. The problem is, the Fantastic Four were once Marvel's most important team. They were the foundation of the Marvel Universe, introducing characters like Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Black Panther. But because Marvel spends so much time neglecting them, they've lost their mainstream appeal. Now, Marvel has to work twice as hard to make audiences care about the Fantastic Four again. The challenge isn't just making a good movie, it's making people believe that the Fantastic Four still matter. At this point, you have to wonder, are the Fantastic Four movies cursed? Every single attempt has been a disaster in some way. The 1994 version was so bad it was never released. The 2005 and 2007 films were campy, forgettable, and failed to turn the team into A-list superheroes. The 2015 reboot was one of the biggest superhero flops of all time. It's not like the Fantastic Four are unpopular. Marvel fans love them in the comics. But for some reason, every movie version fails. Maybe it's because the studios don't understand them. Maybe it's because their powers and personalities don't translate well to live action. Or maybe they're just a relic of a different era, a team that worked better in the 1960s and in modern superhero cinema. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear, Marvel Studios has one last shot to get this right.